Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Council Chambers. And we're here tonight for the April 11th, 2023 regular council meeting. First item on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. And Councilor Meyer, I'd like for you to come forward with that motion, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and more than that. Town Council adopt the April 11th, 2023 regular council meeting agenda as presented.
Thank you very much. Administration, do you have anything to add to this motion? Any changes?
Nothing to add at this time, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Okay, very good. Is all of your team in agreement with you, sir? Okay. All right. All in favor of adopting the agenda as presented? And that motion carries. Very first item on council's agenda in almost every council meeting is the public input session. This is a time that we allow members of the public to speak to council about anything that is not on the current night's agenda. Administration, has anyone registered to speak?
Through the Deputy Mayor, no one has registered to
No
speak
one
this evening.
registered. We do have people in our council chambers, so I will ask, is there anyone in council chambers who would like to speak to council about anything that is not on tonight's agenda? No. Welcome. All right, seeing nothing under public input session, we will go on to presentations and delegations. And I believe there were none scheduled for this evening. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, that puts us forward then, right at the beginning of our statutory public hearing. Today, we have item 5.1, a public hearing for bylaw 2671, LUO 23, a new land use bylaw to repeal current land use bylaw 2654, LUO 22. This is a formal hearing, and it will be recorded. In accordance with the provisions of Section 216.4 and 692 of the Municipal Government Act, the Council of the Town of Stony Plain is holding this hearing to provide an opportunity for public input and comment on the proposed bylaw 2671 LUO 23 land use bylaw. Once the hearing starts, council will hear from administration first, and council will then be able to ask questions for clarity and understanding. Then those in favor of the bylaw are allowed to speak. Council will be able to ask questions of clarity and understanding of anyone who speaks. Then those against the bylaw, and that's anyone in council chambers, will be allowed to speak, and council again will be able to ask questions for clarity and understanding. Then those wishing to make a general comment on the bylaw are allowed to speak. Council will then be able to ask questions for clarity and understanding. Administration may make closing comments if they wish. Members of council, this is a public hearing. Please limit your questions to those for clarity and understanding. This is not the time for the debate. Debate will happen later under 8.1, the bylaw section of our agenda. With that, I now call public hearing open to deal with bylaw 2671 LUO 23 land use bylaw. Administration, would you please provide your presentation on this matter?
Good evening, Madam Deputy Mayor, Council. So as mentioned, this is item 5.1 on your agenda, public hearing for bylaw 2671 LUO 23. So we're here today to discuss the land use bylaw. This is the bylaw which regulates the use of land and the location of buildings on that land. divides the town into districts, which provides specific development regulations for those districts. A brief history on administrative updates to the land use bylaw. In 2021, an administrative update was performed, which included around 4 or 5 years of feedback and noted suggestions to improve the bylaw. Later that year, the bylaw was amended as a result of some cannabis legalization implementation. Last year, the bylaw was updated. Administrative update was performed. However, the bylaw at the time was also used as a policy vehicle to implement some of our housing strategy implementation and represented a significant policy shift for the town. This year, the land use bylaw is really a true administrative update and focuses on excellent service delivery and some red tape reduction. So you can see here the bylaw and this public hearing were advertised in the Town of Stony Plain Reporter. This excerpt is from March 24th. This ad did also run on March 31st. So an overview of some of the changes. As I mentioned before, this administrative update is a true administrative update in the sense that it provides largely clarity and alignment of different regulations in the bylaw to assure effective service delivery. And I will also mention that it was circulated to key stakeholders, being our development industry, to provide comments. Those comments were reviewed and included in the draft. So to discuss some of the changes. Change of use requirements. So the majority of changes of use of a site no longer require a development permit. This is due to the fact that once a building is established on a site, many of the impacts are negligible if the use changes. There are some uses which may present impacts, and those continue to require a development permit. I would also note that during first reading, there were some astute questions from council about whether or not earthworks would continue to require a permit. This has been clarified in the bylaw, and yes, earthworks will continue to require development permits. Temporary events now have a defined time frame. This just assists both staff and the public on understanding when a permit is required. Private road widths were explained in different sections within the land use bylaw. These have been relocated to a general regulation section, which ensures clarity on what the road width requirement is for internal private roads. First lots out of subdivisions. The first lot subdivided from a quarter section will no longer require an area structure plan adoption. This can be overly burdensome for rural single lot subdivisions. Administration recognizes this and wants to support those applications. Listed use alignment. So administration reviewed some uses and included them as being allowed in other districts, just to ensure alignment with uses that were already allowed in those districts and to ensure that relevant uses are permitted in the districts that they should be. This is largely coming about because of an application which administration had to refuse, unfortunately, because the use was not allowed in a district, and we want to be able to support those kinds of applications. There has been an adjustment to the zero lot line section, just to specify the minimum lot width which is permitted. This was intended to be included in the 2022 bylaw amendment. However, it was missed, so just some clarity there. A new section has been added to regulate earthworks. This will largely assist the administration in issuing development permits and providing notices when appropriate. And lastly, a definition has been added in the bylaw for landscaping. Landscaping is a requirement and is referenced many times throughout the bylaw. Defining the term just provides some clarity and understanding of what the acceptable elements are for landscaping. So as I had mentioned, this was advertised in the Town of Stony Plain Reporter on both the 24th and 31st of March. Right now, we are having the public hearing for this item, and provided council's blessing, we will receive second and third reading and a council decision. We'd welcome any questions.
Thank you very much. Council, are there any questions that anyone has for clarity and understanding? None needed. Seeing none, then next in the process for public hearing is the opportunity for anyone in council chambers to speak in favor of the bylaw. Is anyone registered to speak this evening in favor of the bylaw administration?
Through the Deputy Mayor, there are no registrations this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone in council chambers who would like to speak in favor of this proposed bylaw? I'll ask once again. Is there anyone in council chambers who would like to speak in favor of this bylaw? Seeing none of that, then the next in the public hearing will be, sorry, I'm explaining here. Next in the public hearing will be anyone who is opposed to the proposed bylaw. Administration, has anyone registered to speak in opposition?
Through the Deputy Mayor, there's no one registered this evening.
All right, thank you very much for that. Is there anyone in council chambers opposed to the proposed bylaw that would like to make a comment? Anyone wishing to make a comment who is opposed to this bylaw? Once again, council, are there any questions for clarity or understanding? Next, in the public hearing process, having no response to either of the previous questions, is there anyone in council chambers who would like to make a general comment on the proposed bylaw? Just a general comment. Is anyone registered to speak?
Through the Deputy Mayor, there's no one registered to
All right,
speak this evening.
thank you very much. Anyone who wishes to make a general comment? Seeing none, administration, would you like to make any closing comments on this bylaw?
Through Deputy Mayor, no.
Okay, once the hearing is closed, council will now be unable to receive any further written or verbal submissions. Administration, has the process been followed as required by Section 216.4 and 692 of the Municipal Government Act?
Through the Deputy Mayor, yes, it has.
Thank you very much. With that, I declare we're having trouble with the block. The public hearing for bylaw 267 LUO23, land use bylaw closed. We will now go on to the adoption of council minutes. Councilor Anderson, would you please make the motion for that?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll move this evening that Town Council approve the March 27, 2023 regular council meeting minutes as presented here this evening.
Members of council, I know all of you have had the opportunity to read and review council minute meetings from March 27, 2023. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections that you wish to bring up? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion carries. Council board and committee minutes. Councilor Laurie, would you please come forward with that motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll move the Town Council receive the council board and committee minutes for information.
Any members of council have comments or questions on the committee minutes portion of the agenda? Seeing none, I call question on that item. All in favor? That motion also carries. Now we are right where we started again, back at bylaws. We have one bylaw scheduled this evening, which is bylaw 267 LUO23, land use bylaw. Administration, would you please proceed with your presentation?
Through the Deputy Mayor, the administration has no further presentations and would welcome any questions from council.
Okay. Members of council, I'll open the floor for questions specific to clarity or understanding. Please reserve debate and discussion until after this motion is on the floor. Councillor Loynes. I see none. I see no questions. Oh, I do see questions. Thank you for helping me with that, Councillor Loynes. Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Through you to administration, as I read through section 3.25.0 on the zero lot line development, I ended up with two questions that I wanted to bring forward this evening. Both are in regards to the side yard in respect to the zero lot line and the potential maintenance, or in the required maintenance easement. The first question I had is in regards to basement windows. So understanding that basement windows typically require a window well, and that window well would then project out into that potential maintenance easement. And if it is on the house that is on the zero lot line, then theoretically that window well would project beyond the lot line. But I'm not sure whether that's considered part of the structure or not. So I'm just looking to understand, is there any clarity in here, or is there any clarity required in here about basement windows and window wells in respect to zero lot line homes?
Through Deputy Mayor to Councillor Laurie. Yes, so correct, there may be instances where there are window wells and therefore, projection that may go beyond a property line, and it would be circumstantial depending on the specific house. And yes, if that were planned for the area, it would be included in the maintenance easement. It would have to be accounted for as it's not on their property. So any, maintenance or adjustments to the windows would require access on the other property, and this would be addressed through the maintenance easement.
So for clarity for me?
Yes, you may.
So even though the window well would project beyond the property line, if it was on the home that sat on the property line, or even if the window well projected into the minimum 1.5 meter maintenance easement, that would still be allowable?
Through Deputy Mayor to Councillor Laurie, yes, in theory it could be allowable, and it would just have to be addressed through the maintenance easement.
Is that good enough?
Yeah.
Councillor Pletchko.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Again, along the zero lot lines, I'm looking for clarity on, as I read through it, I just need to be clear that any zero lot lines going forward will still require council approval, other than the two specific areas that we have already approved. Anything further, I don't notice that anywhere in that written specifically, but I'm just looking for clarity on that.
Through to Councillor Pletchko, through Deputy Mayor to Councillor Pletchko, yes. Figure 3.2513 shows a map of all the areas which are allowed for zero lot line development. Only 2 areas are specified on that map. Any further areas wishing to implement zero lot line development would have to amend that figure, and therefore would have to amend the land use bylaw, and this would have to be approved by council.
Thank you.
Is that all? Councillor Pletchko.
That's everything. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So through you to administration, staying on the zero lot line theme, this projects more into the fencing aspect of it. We heard when the developer came forward with the proposed zero lot lines that have been accepted, we heard a little bit of a discussion about some of the challenges that can present themselves with fencing. And one thing that they talked about was the requirement that the fences not be allowed to start until the back of the structure. So it would prevent there from being a gate or any fencing in the way of that maintenance easement or in the way of any access to that maintenance easement. When you were looking at the land use bylaw amendments, even though this was more administrative, was there a consideration for any changes to the fencing allowances or provisions on the zero lot line lots?
through Deputy Mayor to Councillor Laurie, no specific review was performed of this zero lot line section specific to fencing. The section is relatively new, and we haven't had any. Those most recent approvals have not been proved out yet. We would be interested, very interested, in observing the built forms and how these develop, and certainly, changes may be made to this section over time as we, get to observe how these communities build out and how effective they are. And fencing absolutely is part of the consideration. Administration does also plan to provide updates to council on the success or any kind of indication of just progress of these developments. So it's something that we're monitoring closely, and certainly we would consider changes if we're noticing issues.
Excellent, thank you. I'm glad to hear that those are things that are going to be watched as we look at these being developed.
Anyone else? I have a question I would like to ask, please. Regarding the sort of touching on the windows in the basement issue that Councillor Laurie raised. I know in the past there have been restrictions on putting side windows in homes that were built too close together. Does that not apply to basement windows? And if not, well, I'll just let you answer that question first.
Yes, Madam Deputy Mayor. So the HERF requirements within the Alberta Building Code, being the I believe it's high intensity residential fire, they continue to apply. So this land use bylaw does not supersede the building code in any way. We would maintain a review of the building drawings and the schedules to ensure that they are still HERF compliant. So in some cases, windows may exist, but they would have to supplement their fire suppression in another way to ensure that they're HERF compliant. So it's possible there is a situation where windows could possibly be there, but we would expect that they supplement the fire suppression. It's unlikely. Most builders, I believe, would elect not to have windows, but it's highly dependent on the builder and the end of line customer and what they desire.
Okay. So that could put the builders in a bit of a dilemma to make the basement the most usable space, because most homes that would fit on a zero lot line would not have basement windows in the front because of front access. And sometimes back would maybe have a deck or whatever, patio, so that kind of gets in the way. So would we be then encouraging builders to build homes that have no basement windows?
To Madam Deputy Mayor, I don't think that we are encouraging one way or the other per se. We're providing the means for the industry to develop, while at the same time safeguarding what we believe is the public interest and ensuring that these developments are done the right way and safely. So I think the option is there for them to go either way, but they have to meet safety requirements that really just cannot be avoided. It's a requirement that has to happen.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else? I see no other questions coming forward from council, so I will call the question. Sorry, I'd like for the motion to be brought to the floor, please. Councillor Loynes.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Town Council gives second reading to bylaw 2671 LUO 23 to repeal land use bylaw 2654 LUO 22 and adopt the new land use bylaw.
The floor is now open for any debate or further discussion. Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a general comment from me this evening. Just to note, I had a conversation with a resident this last week, touched on many subjects. It started off congratulations on the English Bay announcement, and ultimately came around to discussing zero lot lines and sort of the general dissatisfaction with some of that is out there. So I just make a note that despite the fact that this evening we had no public input specifically on this land use bylaw. I do want to note that the original rewrite that included the zero lot lines did have a lot of public debate and input, and council beat that around a lot. So despite the fact that tonight it might seem that we are just doing second and third reading, that no, indeed, we actually did sort of have a good discussion on that, and so just that, I'd like to make a note of that.
That's a good point. The public did speak originally, and this is a rewrite. Okay, very good. Councillor Palachko?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor, through to administration. So this is a bit of a general question, kind of along the lines of Deputy Mayor here a minute ago with basements with no windows. So I've had a chance in the last couple of weeks to visit one of the close communities around, and actually a friend moved into a place that has no windows in the basement, which I was quite taken back by because it's something that's fairly new that you don't see normal. I'm just wondering if you could help the public to understand what is still allowed in a basement that no longer has windows in it, but still qualifies for people to be down there.
Through Deputy Mayor to Councillor Palachko. Though I'm not an expert on the building code, so we may have to provide a further response to this question. I can give you some information. Generally speaking, egress is a requirement if people are going to be habitating in a space. So they would be limited in how the basement could be developed and used without windows. It's certainly, if there's a bedroom, a window would be required, and we can give you further specific details with reference to the building code around what can or cannot be allowed in the basement. Also, too, there's many instances where things get developed without permits, so we're not aware in all cases of developments that may be existing that are not in compliance, right? And largely we rely on complaints to inspect and ensure the safety there, and do require basement development permits anytime that a basement is being used. So that's our formal mechanism to review and ensure that they're being developed safe and have the right window access.
If I could. So I appreciate that answer somewhat, but at the same time, I think it's something that's important that we know that we can or can't do. My understanding through that local development, the only thing that really doesn't qualify for the basement is a bedroom because it requires a window, where if you wanted to make it a sitting room where it's not inhabited on an ongoing basis, that would be required. So I was just curious as to what our bylaws would or wouldn't, or building code would or wouldn't allow for us in this community, because it will be something, if we start to see them come up, that could be a question that gets triggered by a number of people. So thanks. I'll look forward to that answer.
Anything further on this motion for second reading? Seeing no one wanting to speak, I call the question on the second reading of this bylaw. All in favor? And that carries. We now move on to the third reading. Members of council, any questions specific to clarity or understanding before the motion comes to the table? Seeing none, I'll ask Councillor Palachko to move this third reading.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The Town Council give third reading to bylaw 2671/LUO/23.
Thank you. The floor is now open for debate and discussion. Anyone on council wish to participate in that? I see none. No one interested in, you do wish to speak? I'm so happy to acknowledge you, Councillor Palachko.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just want to give kudos to administration for the great job that they did. There was a few questions that were really not answered, but the most of it was put out there. So it's nice to see that some thought and time was really put into it. You took council's previous questions to heart and seen what was there. And obviously, you've done a really good job because we have not had a lot of people sitting in council or attending it to see where or where not we should go. So congratulations on the great job on the.
Yes, anyone else? I'm going to echo Councillor Palachko's comments, especially considering the manner in which administration chose to come forward with rescinding the old bylaw and coming with a brand-new bylaw to make it nice and clean and easy to read for our residents. Sometimes that's a very wise approach because it takes all the angst over what got changed out of it, and it's just right there, very, very clear for people to see. So thank you very much for that. Anything else before I call for the vote? All right, seeing no further discussion, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of third reading on this bylaw? And that motion carries. The next item on the agenda are business items. This evening, we have the approval of the names on the Significant Names Registry. Administration, would you please proceed with your presentation on this matter before council?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and Council. As we get set up with our presentation, we are very pleased to be bringing the naming policy to Council for consideration tonight. As Council may recall, administration brought this forward in late 2022 and was tasked by Council to make a reasonable effort to contact names on the list and make sure that we had made all efforts to gain consent of the family names. In that time, town administration has created a process and dutifully reached out to bring forward the list before council tonight. Tonight we have the town's sustainability planner who oversaw the process from start to finish, from how we engage with the residents and the names, and to present the results here today. So without any further ado, I'll now pass it to our sustainability planner for further presentation.
Okay.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor and Council. So I'm presenting the Significant Names Registry update for information. Through this presentation, I'll discuss the purpose of the Significant Names Registry, provide rationale for the update to the Significant Names Registry, summarize the results of the Significant Names Registry survey, and discuss the next steps. The Significant Names Registry is a list of significant and prominent individuals who are from or have moved to Stony Plain or who have made significant contributions to Stony Plain's community and history. The purpose of the registry is to provide a list of options that can be referenced when naming features throughout the community to recognize the importance of celebrating our community and its residents, honor the people who have made Stony Plain what it is today, and provide cultural opportunities that ensure our history is captured in our future. Rationale for this work stems from the town naming policy, which was updated in 2022 to define the Significant Names Registry, provide criteria for names that are suitable for submission, and define public commemorative naming and its connection to the Significant Names Registry. And as mentioned, when administration brought the town naming policy and the first draft of the Significant Names Registry to council on October 24th, 2022, town council moved to establish the Significant Names Registry and to approve the names on the preliminary list once a reasonable effort has been made to contact the individual or family of the individual on the preliminary list to seek their approval. And in this motion, reasonable effort was specified as a period of time over 3 months. To satisfy this request, Town Administration released a public survey from November 14th, 2022 to February 14th, 2023, where respondents could confirm a name that was on the preliminary list, propose a name to be considered for the registry, or provide a general comment or question. In the event where no comments were received on a preliminary name, it would be approved following the survey period as per the council motion made on October 24th, 2022. The town received 74 responses on the survey. 34 were complete responses and 40 were incomplete responses. And of these, 26 responses were related to confirming a name on the preliminary list. 36 responses were related to submitting an additional name for consideration, and 12 responses were general comments or questions. Of the 26 responses related to confirming a preliminary name, 11 were blank or incomplete, 11 responses confirmed Reg Koch, and 1 response confirmed each of the following names for Israel Umbach, John L. McDonald, Brown, and Kulak. Of the 36 submissions received for additional names to be considered for addition to the registry, 15 were blank or incomplete, 4 were received for Margit Knupp, 3 were received for Donna Cowan, and 2 were received for Hennig, and one response was received for the remaining name submissions. And overall, 15 new names were submitted for consideration to be added to the registry. Through this process, the town developed a decision matrix to determine which of the 15 name submissions were suitable to recommend to council for addition to the significant names registry. Submissions needed to meet 3 decision criteria to be recommended, which included alignment with the town naming policy, availability of historical references or community input that confirmed the submission information, and authorization from the individual or family of the individual that enabled the town to use this name for naming features throughout the community. So using these criteria, 10 of the 15 name submissions are being recommended to council for addition to the registry, and this is in addition to the list of preliminary names that were submitted to council in October of last year, and that totaled 18 names in October. So 10 in addition to the original 18. Names that were submitted via the survey that are not being recommended for the registry at this time may be recommended in the future if the decision criteria can be met upon receiving additional information. And of the 12 comment or question submissions received on the survey, 7 were blank or incomplete, and 5 general questions were received. And when requested, follow-up with these respondents was completed. So overall, the Significant Names Registry Survey resulted in 5 initial names being confirmed, 15 additional names being submitted, 5 general comments being received, and 10 additional names being recommended to council tonight for addition to the registry. And if council chooses to approve the names recommended for the Significant Names Registry, administration will finalize and maintain the registry in accordance with the town naming policy. Administration has also formalized application forms for new Significant Names Registry requests and general naming requests to clarify the process for receiving and reviewing naming applications in Stony Plain. With these processes in place, names approved on the Significant Names Registry will be used as a reference when reviewing future applications for naming features throughout the community. This concludes administration's presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, administration. Does council have any questions that have come up? Anything for clarity or understanding? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you for being here again with us and for excuse me, your presentation this evening. A quick question on the application process. Certainly looking through our package tonight, appreciate the work that's gone in based on the discussion that was had the first time this came into chambers. But, you know, I know that we had like a 3-month period this time around in terms of accepting applications. Moving forward from here, is this an open application process? Will there be a window annually where new names can be submitted? I appreciate that there's a process now in place with applications, et cetera. Just wondering kind of what the time frame is for that, if there is.
Through the Deputy Mayor to Councillor Anderson, thank you for the question. The intent right now is that applications, they're open applications, so people can submit additional names for consideration at any point. That administration would then bring back to council at a regular interval. So right now, we're kind of thinking that could be twice a year. It depends on the volume that comes in.
Yeah, absolutely, and I appreciate that. I actually, I don't know if excited is the right word, but certainly appreciated the work that went into the decision matrix that you have here. And, you know, it's pretty clean, clear cut, and not a lot of room for, you know, kind of that debate and should they, shouldn't they, you know, in terms of establishing the criteria. You know, and as the first discussion had gone around, I know that the family permission was something that I found very, very important, and certainly appreciate how that's been built into the matrix moving forward. So it's nice to see, you know, the names on the list and the work that's been done there. I know that's not a small task, but it's also great to see some additional names come forward this evening. So certainly appreciate the work on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? I do have a question. Councillor Loynes, you may ask your question for clarity.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just in regards to the comments that were received, there was a comment here that said to make sure there's a deep dive into the person's background so we don't end up with some quote-unquote crooked person down the road. Can admin just confirm exactly what background information they are going through? Like, it wasn't indicated in the whole process.
Through the Deputy Mayor to Councillor Loynes. So the information that administration was referencing was any historical information that was available either online, through newspaper articles, through books. Along the Fifth is a great book, especially when it comes to families that are important and significant to the town. Additionally, in any case where that information wasn't publicly available, if the respondent provided contact information, then it was contacting them directly to see if they could get information on behalf of a community organization or someone other than a family member to kind of justify or back up the information that was provided by the survey respondent.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to administration. I'll echo Councillor Anderson's comments. Going through this and seeing the process, the decision matrix, everything, I think, you know, compared to when this first came to council, I think every bit of feedback was heard, and I really appreciate the work that went into it. I've got a little bit of a question, I guess, on the next steps. As you mentioned, the administration maintains a significant name registry as per the town's naming policy. How are decisions made in regards to any of these names being used? And with that kind of family input, is it generalized as where when people submit names to this, they understand that they can be chosen for anything in the community? Or is it that, you know, you'll give them the opportunity if you wanted to name a road or a park or anything like that? Can you just, a little bit of a brief overview of that?
Through the Deputy Mayor to Councillor Laurie. So the intent is that once the family authorizes the name to be on the list, that it could be assigned to a feature throughout the community. That being said, just because a name is on a list, an applicant would still have to submit a subsequent naming request to assign a specific name to a specific feature throughout the community.
I'd get clarification on that, yes.
Yep, so thank you, and that definitely is a great point, because the names get approved on the list, and then there is that second step of if something was to be renamed or what have you, there is a process on that. Now, oftentimes the town is responsible for naming things. So will the town use this list, or will we go by, for instance, with our streets, we'll continue to use the numbering system unless a request is made? Or will a park or a feature just be known by its geographic name or will we pick, or the town pick, something from this list? How will that work?
Yeah, through the deputy mayor to Councillor Laurie. So the town naming policy does indicate who has authority over naming. So in some cases it is town administration, depending on the feature, but in other cases it is council. So the intent is that names that are on the significant names registry can be used to name any of those features if an application is submitted to assign that. But additionally, it would kind of depend on the applicant's desire. So whether it was a developer, a member of council, another community member, they have to go through the application process. And then for certain features, the name would have to come from the registry. Other features, they don't. So it would be a discussion when the applicant submits the application.
Excellent, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Laurie. Well, I would like to get clarification on that. It seems to me that once we approve this, the list now becomes town's use, and it's a public domain issue. Why are we having to go back and ask for permission again? Do we have to ask for permission if we want to name a park or a stream or a street? That particular name that's now sitting on our already approved list, why do we have to go back to who? The public? The family that put that name forward? That seems like an extra cog in the wheel that would be a problem if we go to a family and say we'd like to put that name on our hidden park, and somebody says, no, I want the name on a much more prominent feature. That seems to open the sort of a kettle of worms that we didn't need to open. It seems to me if we've gotten the approval to use it, it's on our list, we use it at will. Could you please explain that?
Yeah, to the deputy mayor. So the intent at this time is once the name is approved on the significant names registry, that it could be assigned to a feature as per administrations or accounts at their discretion, depending on who the authority is. The intent is not to go back to those families or those applicants to request it to be assigned to a feature.
Okay. So clarification again then, please. When you say to the applicant, a builder, a developer might be an applicant and they want to name streets. Is that the applicant you're speaking of there? Someone would come forward to administration, or does that come back to council for further approval?
To the deputy mayor, depending on the feature being named, it goes back to the authority who can approve that name. So certain roads, depending on their hierarchy, are town administration's authority and some are council. So some of those might come back to council in the future, depending on the feature it is, as outlined under the town naming policy.
Okay. And if at any time this or any future council wishes to name a certain feature in town, such as when we named Heritage Park, we had a long debate. There was a process, there was research. If the name didn't come off any list, council is free, any council is free to come up with their own suggestions on any such matter in the future. Is that right, or are we now tied to this list and this list only?
To the deputy mayor, no, you're not tied to this list. The intent of the registry is that it's there as a reference. If somebody wants to pull a name that's already been approved, they can do so. But once again, as per the town naming policy, council or town administration has authority to name certain features, and so things do not always have to come from the list.
Excellent. And if in the future another group of names comes forward, would we go through this same process again? A future council would go through the same process to put additional names on the list, and would the names be used over and over and over again, or would they be used maybe once or twice and then that's it? That's all we're going to use that name?
To the deputy mayor, sorry, could you repeat the first? There was a few questions in there. Could you repeat the first one?
Okay, let's see if I can do this in a simpler way. if somebody wants to come forward and add additional names in the future, not a somebody, but names come forward and you get a collection, at some time in the future, will that group of names come back to a future council to approve another brand-new group of names to go on the list?
Yes, that is correct. Thank you.
Okay. Next question. Would the names, once they go on the list, not necessarily be used over and over and over again, but I suppose that we could go back to the public and say, would you come up with some more names and let's create another list, because we've used these in periods of great growth. It's easy to see names would get used up and then we'd be out of names. Is that a process that you see happening perhaps over and over and over again?
Yeah, thank you for repeating that, Deputy Mayor. I think that's something that is still up for discussion. I know with the naming and addressing, we don't want repeat names in terms of confusing people about different features, so we don't want anything to be too similar. However, we might not rule out using a name for multiple features if that's something that the town sees fit. So I think it will be identified on a case-by-case basis, and then just ensuring that the Significant Names Registry is tracking the features that these names are being used for, or being assigned to, so that we kind of have a running tab of that for future reference.
Okay. And one last question. Any name on the list may or may not be used, or if they're on the list, then we, as a community, are guaranteeing that the names will be used in some way?
To the Deputy Mayor, there is no guarantee that the names will be used. They are just a reference that we could use if desired, if applicants are interested.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything further? My questions didn't spur anyone to further comment. That's interesting. Okay, we are now at the point of calling the question with no further discussion. No, we have to have a motion. Councillor Meyer, would you put the motion on the floor, please?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. The Town Council approved the names on the Significant Names Registry.
Thank you very much. Open for debate and discussion on the motion. Councillor Meyer, you wish to speak to this?
Just a comment this evening. So I'm very excited. I appreciate of the administration's efforts on this item. I'm also glad to see a number of prominent women added to this list, as well as some prominent business people. It's good to see not just politicians on the Significant Name Registry. So just that.
Good comments. Anything else anyone wishes to bring forward? All right, seeing none, I'm going to call question. All in favor of this motion? And that motion carries. We now have come to the end of our agenda. I can't tell you how excited I am about that. We have council discussion. I don't get to use this yet. Okay. Council discussion. Now, we've had a busy couple of weeks, so would anyone, who wants to start this? Councillor Pletchko.
Sure, thank you, Deputy Mayor. My question tonight is for CAPS, I think. I've had several inquiries over the last little bit regarding Boulder Boulevard and parking on Boulder Boulevard. And I'm curious what responsibility of that is the town's, with people parking too close to entrances and then having accidents that have happened on there. I'm understanding that there's been a number of accidents over the last couple years, some that more serious than others. And the question has been posed, is that town's responsibility to make sure that the businesses along there are making sure that their staff that are parking on the street or the big trucks that are coming down there are parking in an appropriate area that doesn't block the view of the people leaving the businesses along there as they're exiting. Just wondering if there's signage that we could put up that would limit the amount of people that park on the streets. If the businesses along there, somebody should maybe have a bit of a discussion that their employees should be parking on the streets, or if it's just left up to whoever to park wherever.
Through the Deputy Mayor to Councillor Paleschko, certainly we do have signage up that has various degrees of parking permissions. The Traffic Safety Act also has provisions in there in terms of how close you can park to a crosswalk and also an entrance to, or a driveway is what it would be called, versus an entrance. Certainly if there are infractions being noted, we would certainly take those locations and go out there. I do know the CPOs do go out, and this is an area of frequent concern for us with respect to parking and some of the other issues that you've described this evening. So it's an area that we do include it with part of our regular patrols. With the number of CPOs we do have, obviously we can't be there 24 hours a day to see everything. So certainly there are provisions within our bylaw. There's signage up that restricts parking in certain areas and limits the number of hours that you can park in certain areas. So throughout my time here, we've made significant changes to the parking in that complete industrial park in terms of some of the areas that might be of more concern. There's some evaluation that's been completed and the signage has been placed or the restrictions have been put on in accordance with the safety and other aspects and the flow of traffic in that particular area. So if there's a location that's a little bit more prominent than others in terms of some of these activities that you're sharing with us this evening, certainly we'll take that location and we can certainly do some increased enforcement if needed.
Yeah, Madam Deputy Mayor, if I may just add a little bit there too, and I think the General Manager spoke to it, but over the course of a number of years, there's been different challenges brought up by local businesses, essentially related to overnight parking by, I don't know the technical term, but basically by trucking companies or truckers using the hotels. That's come up a number of different times in a couple different spots over the years. So I'm not sure if that's a specific concern, but we will generally try to, I think as the General Manager alluded to, we've put up a fair amount, I would say, going from, sort of, I would say east to west, down the east-west chunk of Boulder Boulevard on 3-hour parking, which allows vehicles to be there and park and, conduct business, so to speak, but does restrict the overnight parking on the street. That does occur from time to time. I presume it still does occur from time to time, but now we do actually have a way to regulate that there. The other thing in the question that I heard that I just wanted to address too was, the town doesn't have any added liability in the instance where someone is essentially breaking a traffic bylaw or whatever. The notion of accidents occurring, there would be no added liability or on the town's behalf from an enforcement perspective, or frankly lack thereof. I'm not aware of that being brought as a case, and I'm not aware, although it's not like I've specifically searched, but not aware of that being brought into a municipal liability legal situation and having lost. So I'll stop there, Deputy Mayor. I'm not sure if there's follow-up, but there's just a few more comments to add into it.
Okay, Councillor Paleschko.
So thank you for the comments, and I appreciate that. But so I've had a chance to drive through there. There's been a number of incidents that have been brought to mind, and I can tell you it's the motel, it's the Dairy Queen, it's across from the Tire Craft store, it's down around the Competition Chev Olds place, and a little bit down a bit further. And if you drive through there on a regular basis, you will see that, you can see where somebody is parked, where there's a bit of a sign that says, stay back here, but then somebody sneaks in there and you can't actually drive into a driveway. Or if you do drive into the driveway coming out, you can't see around that vehicle. So there's a fair bit of it going on. And I'm just wondering if maybe it's something that our CPOs could drive by, maybe have some nice conversations and give some warnings that it might be nice to stay back of the curb so that people can access the parking lots and exit the parking lots, rather than just handing out fines to begin with. I think it's maybe just a courteous, we've done it on different areas at the time, and maybe that's an area that just needs a bit of an address to curb a bit of that over the next period of time.
Deputy Mayor, through to Councillor Pletchko, certainly we can do that. We often do approaches that are not fine-driven, so certainly we can come up with a strategy and perhaps send some notifications out to the businesses there just to remind their customers and their staff to adhere to and hear some of the local traffic rules that they should be paying attention to, not just in this location, but as they're operating their vehicles across the province. So we can certainly look at some strategies like that and take more of a educational approach versus an enforcement approach.
Thank you.
Anything else? Councillor Loynes.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. A couple things. I wanted to thank the General Manager from Planning and Infrastructure for getting back to my concerns that I brought up last week in regards to the Black Knot and the safety by the Esso service station over on Veterans Boulevard. So muchly appreciated for him and his team to deal with that. I also wanted to pass along a message to the representative for the library. My family spent Saturday doing their Easter egg hunt, and it was very much enjoyable. There was, I would say, over 50 kids participating, and everybody had a great time with all the different crafts and things going on. So if you could pass that along to them, that would be wonderful. And thirdly, on Saturday from 7:30 to 9:30 at Heritage Park, there's the 8th annual Whispering Waters fundraiser concert happening. It is open to all. Tickets are available at the door. And yeah, that's all I know. So thank you so much.
Excellent. Good reminder. Anyone else? Councillor Laurie.
Excellent. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a couple of quick things. Obviously, was very excited to attend, and congratulations and well done on your comments on Thursday for the English Bay announcement. That's a fantastic amenity to our community that we're adding, and just goes to show that the work that's being done by our staff and our departments is truly paying off. Also was very happy to attend the Educational Planning Day with Parkland School Division last week, and it was a great event. I'd encourage all council, if you get the opportunity to attend that event in the future, please do so. It gave a lot of great insight. I do have a couple of questions, and maybe I'll just ask all three of them, and then I'll go for answers. So the first question is just wondering if we can get a status on the golf course, and with the change in weather that we've had, if we have any understanding as to when that might be up and running for the season, and if that is kind of in line with our initial projections. Question regarding the trail connection between Spruce Grove North along Veterans Boulevard. No, that trail was almost completed, and then there was a pause because of some construction of the pipeline, I believe it was, that was going through there. That construction appears to be done. Just wondering when the trail is going to be completed and listed as open, because there is still a barricade up there saying it is technically closed. And then just wondering, the gravel parking lot at Heritage Park is quite rutted and is not in very good condition. I'm just wondering when we will see some maintenance done on that so that it's smoothed out for any events that are being hosted there.
Deputy Mayor, through to Councillor Laurie, I'll take number 1 and number 3. So number 1, we're projecting to open the driving range this week, so Thursday, if the weather continues to project as it's forecasted. And proposed opening would be around the 22nd, 23rd of April. Again, the caveat being weather. So certainly we're keeping the tarps on for as long as we can with the hot weather. Definitely a lot of snow disappeared over the last 3 to 5 days, which allowed us to move some of our projections a little bit forward. So I would suggest loosely this week you'll see the driving range open, whether that's Thursday or the weekend. Limited hours. Certainly we only have staff working certain times. Once the course is open, then of course the hours will start to increase, because we'll have tea times, and we'll be opening the course at a specific time, closing it, versus a little bit of those lower staff numbers right now. So again, driving range this week, and probably a week or two later, we'll have the course open.
Excellent. Thank you.
number 3. So the gravel parking lot at Heritage Park, it does get graded quite a bit. It just takes a weekend of donut competitions to rut it up. So we do have our staff over there certainly paying attention to that. Our CPOs are aware, RCMP are aware, but often that's the case in terms of, any big event that's happening out there, our public works staff are in good communication with our team down at Heritage Park, and they're often making sure that that parking lot is in good shape for events, but it just takes a few hours of specific drifting activity, and that causes a bit of a poor look to that parking lot.
Yeah, excellent, thank you. And I noticed it on Thursday when we were there for both the announcement, and I was there for the educational planning day, so I decided to take a drive through, and it was quite so glad to hear that that's on top of regularly.
Through the Deputy Mayor to Councillor Laurie, answering question 2 on the Spruce Stony Trail, referencing that's the Spruce Grove portion that's been completed in previous years. We do keep in good contact with our counterparts at Spruce. As you noted, there was some utility construction occurring going through that alignment during the time that was construction. As I understand it, in my last conversation with Spruce, they are looking to wrap that up very shortly. They don't have exact dates right now, as there's some final conversations that have to happen with the said utility company. But it's anticipated this year that they'll have that open. We're keeping each other apprised and through conversations. So if I get a firm date from them, I will be relaying that to council as soon as I have it. And just to add to the general manager of Community Protective Services answer, I did get in contact with our operations crew, and they advised that once it's dry enough that they will be going out to blade the HP parking lot. So all things being equal, they're hopeful for the end of the week. However, they do need some certain conditions before they can just go blade it.
Any follow-up?
You may.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, thank you very much for the answer in regards to the first trail connection there. Also just wondering if we have a bit of a project status and timeline in regards to the second trail connection that's going to run along Highway 16A.
Through Deputy Mayor to Councillor Laurie, with respect to the second connection, that's expected to go down 16A. That's being built by the town side. We are currently anticipating to have that to tender very shortly within the next month. There is some final discussions happening with Alberta Environment right now in terms of the proximity to the wetland, but otherwise we're still on track for getting that out to tender very shortly. And again, I'm happy to provide an update once we've begun that process to council to keep both Spruce Grove and Stony Plain councils apprised.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That's all for me this evening.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'd like to bring up a couple of items, if I might. Sorry, Councillor Anderson, you have such a quiet hand raise. There you go. Councillor Anderson, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I've a few things tonight, all very much unrelated, and so a little bit all over the map. But was wondering who was going to get to talk about English Bay, and so Councillor Laurie beat me to it. When you started at the other end there with Councillor Pletchko, I knew it wouldn't make it all the way around. But a huge project for our community. Jack Sagan, had a chance to meet with him a couple of times, and his wife and their team, and thrilled to see the investment they're making in our community. I've kind of likened it to a big puzzle where there are so many people within our town staff and within the municipality that had a hand in that, and everybody kind of had their piece that they brought to the table, whether that's planning and infrastructure or looking at our economic development team. I know senior leadership in council, there was so many that had their hand in helping move that project forward. And so it was awesome to see the announcement come out on Thursday last week. So thank you to Councillor Laurie for bringing that up this evening. Second is just a quick reminder, next week is Volunteers Week. I know we have an event at Heritage Park on Tuesday, 4 to 6. I do have a quick question for administration. I believe I know the answer, but I've had couple of questions from the public related to, do we need an invitation to attend? Or if we volunteer within the community, are we allowed to drop by? And so if you wouldn't mind some clarity there, please.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Anderson, thank you for the question. We're very excited to host the Volunteer Appreciation event. And no, an invitation is not required. If you are a community volunteer, you are more than welcome to join us.
Well, and that is the invitation. So if you're waiting for one, there it is. So we, I always appreciate this event and hearing just the stories of volunteerism in our community. I think we're a community that is proud of our volunteer efforts, and it's great to celebrate that together. So Tuesday, April 18th, 4 to 6, would love to see you there. Finally, this evening, just circling back to a conversation we had February 13th related to the recreation center. When that came back into chambers with some of the changes to the project and some of the updates, we had an opportunity to ask some questions around accessibility measures, specifically, what our planning and engineering and architects were considering in terms of the accessibility side of things. Now, I know we were informed a little bit about the Alberta Building Code, but we also had a discussion about best practice that kind of extended beyond, the basic standard in terms of developing a barrier-free facility. I believe the mayor at that time also had suggested a consultant or a consulting company that may be able to consult on this particular project. And so just looking for an update from administration to see where that conversation has gone in the last 2 months.
Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Anderson, certainly the architect was advised of that they do have people on staff, and we did also present them with the more local individual that has done some of that work. So I can get a status during our regular scheduled meeting this week to see where that is at.
Perfect. Yeah, and I would certainly appreciate an update by email if you don't mind, as the discussions move forward and the planning is complete. I think we have a great opportunity here to make sure we build a facility, if approved this fall, that will serve all of our residents. And I think the accessibility and universal design is an important part of that for our residents. So, and that's it for me. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Meyer.
Don't we all get a turn? Just very quickly, I'm sure administration is aware, we had our big windstorm there on the weekend. A number of items seem to have collected in the creek, and I know we have our spring cleanup coming, but I can't imagine we want residents piling down into the creek. So I'm just curious if we have a plan to send staff out there and when and if that might happen.
Through the Deputy Mayor to Councillor Meyer, there's no specific plan to go for this particular event. If there's an unusual amount of accumulation noted, please, we would advise residents or otherwise to contact Public Works, and we can see if we can address any unusual accumulation of garbage from the recent windstorm.
So sorry, would this count as letting you guys know now?
If there's a specific location I could get from you, or is it just throughout the creek, would be helpful to target the crews. So certainly I could circle back with you and get to those locations from you.
Yep, perfect.
So that, just for clarification, if the public knows of items that ended up in the creek as a result of the big windstorm that we had, rather than risk possible injury or do damage to the bank, it's best to notify the town through Public Works or planning. Which should they notify?
Through Deputy Mayor, thank you for the question. We would prefer that the public contact our Public Works Department, so that if they do have to enter the creek, they are doing so safely and on behalf of the residents.
Okay, very good. So if anyone watching this now and in the next few days online on YouTube, call Public Works, rather than try to retrieve items on your own, especially if they don't belong to you. Items like this that end up in the creek are kind of like graffiti. They're there, they invite more things to be dumped into the creek, and I've seen quite a pile along Whispering Waters Creek north of 44th Avenue from time to time. So hopefully that won't happen. Thank you for bringing that issue up, Councillor Meyer. Anything else? Well, I do want to say, I'm going to take just a moment. I want to talk also about the really big deal announcement that happened over the English Bay coming to Stony Plain. That wasn't really just our event. The provincial government was a major player there. They brought $2.14 million forward for this developer to encourage him to come, and that was through Edmonton Global Work. And yes, it does pay to belong to these organizations because things do come back that are good in our community. The wonderful thing about it is that this will also spur other companies to want to come to Stony Plain. So I can't stress strongly enough how important this development was for Stony Plain. Actually, it was a really tangible answer to decades of dreams about that North Business Park from when it was first developed and created, and we sat there waiting for wonderful things to happen. Many wonderful things have happened and been built and created in that North Business Park. But this is a major investment that will come from a private investor, and the province has backed him with their money. And I just want to give kudos to everyone who helped make that happen. Councils, past and present. Administrations, past and present. Our current General Manager of Planning and Infrastructure, Brett Newstead, who works so well with our economic development team, and sort of everybody worked together to put this through. Our General Manager of Corporate Services, who seemed to be there making a lot of things happen that day. I wasn't permitted there in that event to say, this is a really big deal, people, but I'm going to say it tonight. It is, and we're very, very happy that Mr. Sagan has come forward with his company, English Bay, that they want to build a number of buildings in the North Business Park. They want to grow our town and offer jobs. So thank you to everybody, our CAO, and council, everyone who participated and did their piece to make this happen. My deep appreciation, and I know you'll have deep appreciation from Mayor Choi when he returns. Thank you, everyone. And with that, I see no more business. Yes, Councillor Meyer, do you want to speak again? Councillor Meyer? Councillor Anderson.
Sorry, just quickly before we adjourn, just on behalf of council, Deputy Mayor, we want to thank you for your leadership over the last couple of weeks here with the mayor taking an opportunity to step away. You had some big shoes to fill and have served us and led us well and represented us well, with the announcement last week and those sorts of things. So I believe he will be returning this week, but we just wanted to take an opportunity to thank you for your leadership over the last couple of weeks.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I hope everyone had a blessed Easter and enjoy the better weather that's supposed to come to us after this drizzle and snow and rain stop. Or maybe we'll get more rain. That's wonderful too. Thank you, everyone. With that, I'm going to adjourn this meeting.